I think the amazing thing about hip-hop is that regardless of the culture that adopts it, it becomes a music of resistance. We've been looking at hip-hop around the world for the 50th anniversary of the genre. And today on the podcast, we're going to look at how hip-hop's arrival changed music in Korea. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Listen, all year we've been looking at hip-hop's roots. It's been a celebration of hip-hop turning 50. So we've looked at hip-hop scenes across Canada and around the world. And on today's podcast, we're looking at hip-hop in Korea's massive music market. So I talked to Hae-kyung. She's a senior lecturer in music at the University of Liverpool. Listen, we can't cover the entire history of Korean hip-hop in about 15 minutes or so, but Hae-kyung gave us a good place to start. So we begin in 1992 when the hip-hop group Sotaeji and the Boys were emerging. They released a song called I Know, and it became a phenomenon.
난 알아요 이 밤이 흐르면 유유유 그대 떠나는 모습을 위로하고 마지막 키스의 슬픈 마음 정말 떠나는가.
That's a jam. That's a bit of I Know by Sotaeji and the Boys. I asked Hae-kyung about what she remembered about the early days of hip-hop in Korea.
Oh, that was really sensational. First time when Sotaeji and the Boys performed, everyone just went so amazed and really fascinated by a completely new form of art and what they were singing about, because it was so rebellious and so different from what it was. So especially young generations, they just absolutely loved it. His nickname was Cultural President. He was the president of the new Korean culture.
I'm glad that we were starting there because we asked you to pick 5 songs to walk us through this history of Korean hip-hop. And the first song you chose is Taeji by Koo Chang-mo from 2021. He pays tribute to the beginnings of Korean hip-hop in the early 90s by name-dropping the artists that you just named, so Taeji and the Boys. Let's listen to a little bit of it.
Yeah,
so he also samples some of the song Come Back Home by Sotaeji and the Boys. Let's hear that. Hae-kyung, why did you choose to start us off there?
Oh, because it's quite meaningful in many ways. It's a kind of tribute to Sotaeji and the Boys, who started hip-hop in South Korea in early 1990s. And although you say Sotaeji is very legendary and praising it, but also became a very much part of mainstream music industry. So in a way, but he was making, let's say, a critique that Sotaeji is an artistic achievement, which is a much valued. It's also, let's say, economically rewarded. So it's a kind of playing at both sides of the coins.
I'm interested in this because it's one thing to sort of achieve the artistic achievement, but as you were just mentioning, there is this commercial aspect of it, right? So the first 3 albums each sell over 1 million copies. Some of those songs are political and even got banned. What was so controversial about their music?
I think probably they were very open about the social issues and the corruptions and inequality. And another thing was also a very stifling education system in South Korea. But this is not just in South Korea because it's a common kind of a problem in East Asia in general. But no one like Sotaeji did it so well because he just opened a can of worms. The other hip-hop rappers, for example, Epic High and many other ones, they followed the suit and then they will become even more sharp, assertive about some of the issues, and very, very specific, even without really naming the name of person, but they can be really, 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 really sharp about criticizing all the injustice and the things. There was a case until about the mid-2000s, but then from 2010 onwards, South Korean music industry became very industrialized. K-pop became more mainstream, and South Korean hip-hop became kind of very much part of that industrialization of popular music in Korea.
As you're talking there, it made me think about the fact that it's just remarkable that everywhere you take the form of hip-hop and you put it, it starts, in its origins, it's political. In its origins, it is necessarily kind of adversarial, kind of pushing back against the machine in some ways. How much do we see political activism appearing in Korean music today?
Not very much. Partly because politics in South Korea has changed quite a bit. They no longer have to fight against a military dictatorship.
Right.
And of course, South Korea is not a perfect society. At least there is the state censorship, which was applied until about 1990s, is not completely removed, but it's very much relaxed. So artists were able to express their own views and so on and so forth. So because the political and the economic context changed so much, the political engagement of the artists is far less than what it was before. For example, compared to 1980s and 1990s, a lot of university campus protest song was a really, really, really political. I mean, upfront political about Korean society. But you don't see it that much nowadays. And the audience, I mean, their taste also changed too. And many rappers, they talk about the everyday life, personal kind of issues, and their love, and so on and so forth. So it's become less politicized.
The next song that you've chosen for us on our playlist is What You Write For by Verbal Jint featuring P-Type and the Illest Ills. It's from the 2001 EP Modern Rhymes. The reason we're playing the song is because of the way that Korean language is used in this record. That's what makes it significant. Let's listen to this.
어떤 이들은 몇몇의 대상을 주름거리로 만들었던 내 예전의 가사를 보곤 어리고 건방진 라임 메이커일 뿐이라고 날 비난을 하네. 하지만 한 번이라도 나의 가사들 안에 담겨진 인문화에 대한 사랑과 배려를 일상적인 단어들 속에 담아내려는 노력을 직접 느껴본 이들이 더 많으리라 믿어. 누군가를 씹는 랩.
Hey Kyung, you've identified this album as an album that becomes a benchmark for a lot of South Korean rappers. Why this record?
He's known for his kind of poetic rapping style and his contribution to the rhyming technique in the early 2000s. Before then, there was no such thing at all. And many Korean rappers tried to emulate the American US style because the language is very different and so on and so forth. So he's one of the very first Korean rappers who developed it. And also, he really understood the poetics of the language. It's become a very, very, very kind of a very useful tool for many younger rappers to follow. Of course, nowadays there are many other rappers who also came up with a very, very sophisticated rhyming techniques and so on and so forth. So the thing is, he was the first one and I can think of. And especially in the 90s and early 2000s, there's a huge argument about authenticity questions and what is authentic Korean rap. Language became such a big issue, whether they should rap in Korean only. If they were to rap in Korean, how they should do it. The language choice continues to be a very important factor that really gives the shape to the cultural identity and the styles and aesthetics of South Korean hip-hop.
I love that example because I'm really attracted to rappers that sort of give us these moments where you go, I didn't know you could do that. It expands the boundaries of language just a little bit. And it sounds like that is what's happening there with Verbal Jint. I want to talk about one of the biggest rappers in the world right now, which is Suga from BTS. He released a solo album, went on tour earlier this year before starting his military service. You picked the song Daijpita. It incorporates a lot of traditional Korean sounds. Let's listen to some of it.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, if you weren't awake before, you're awake now. Hey Kyung, how come you picked this song?
Of course, there are many other rappers who use traditional elements such as music and dance and images and setting and everything. But there's no other rappers who brought this kind of work into attention. Became really huge nationally and globally. Really shows how this can be done.
It is a song that sort of, the minute that starts to play, you can't, help but start to move your body right along with it. And you want to spend more time in that. Okay, so Hey Kyung, the next song you chose is by Yoon Mi-rae. She's called the godmother of Korean hip hop. She wrote this song called Black Happiness in 2007. It's a song about her experience as a half Korean and half black musician in Korea. Let's listen to a bit of Black Happiness.
하얀 비누를 내 눈물에 녹였네 까만 피부를 나 속으로 원망해 와 세상 세상은 나를 판단해 세상이 미워질 때마다 두 눈을 꼭 감아 아빠가 선물해준 음악에 내 혼을 담아 볼륨을 타고 높이 높이 날아가 저 멀리 La music It goes on and on and on 세상이 미울 때
In a similar way to like Lauryn Hill, you don't have to speak the language to hear the pain and the anger in her voice. What is Yu Murray rapping about in the song Black Happiness?
It's about her difficulties in the sense of a marginalization she felt in Korea because of her skin color. But at the same time, music really gives her kind of solace and comfort and happiness. So it's a kind of her connection with the music. I mean, given that hip hop is a very much kind of has a very strong connection with the African American culture. But when it comes to the artists, both hip hop and the punk, they're quite ethnically more homogeneous compared to K-pop, which recruit more transnationally. They're more international artists and so on and so forth. So it's a quite interesting contrast.
I'm also interested in the fact that within the context of Korean hip hop, variety shows are a huge cultural force. That's not something that you see a lot in North American hip hop culture. There are some, but hip hop is a popular theme of variety shows in Korea. There are battle rap shows, there are dance battle shows. How have these reality shows shaped the way that we understand Korean hip hop right now, do you think?
Oh, huge. It's not just a hip hop, just about the Korean music industry.
Yeah.
And it's hugely influenced by this mediatization of this performance and over all different kinds of genres, not just hip hop. So it's every single genre they specialize, they produce different kind of reality shows. And the many rappers, their career is very much now is supported by these TV programs. So that means that they have a kind of income and good revenue and the reputation. They shoot up to kind of a big stardom and so on and so forth. But at the same time, this kind of format emphasizes and encourages a certain type of rapping styles and the competitiveness, a sheer competitiveness. So for the interest of a kind of viewing rating, on the one hand, it's really great, but on the other hand, it really kind of, let's say, limit diverse and the more richer kind of development of hip hop in terms of the content, especially the lyrical content. It's a very entertaining, but that's the beginning and the end of it. So that is a kind of a shortcomings.
These shows, these competition shows, are kind of framed differently, right? Like rap competition show Show Me the Money premiered in 2012. That was the only hip-hop show on Korean TV at the time. Then a few years later, they make a spin-off for female rappers called Unpretty Rap Star. First of all, what a name, Unpretty Rap Star. Second of all, what does that tell you about the attitudes towards Korean women in hip-hop at the time?
It's quite problematic, of course. Unpretty. I mean, why do you have to be unpretty in order to become a rap star?
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a misogyny there. But at the same time, a lot of female rappers found a kind of opportunity to develop their career, which otherwise would have a very little kind of opportunity. There's one rapper called Youngji Lee, who won many, many different kind of reality shows, including competing against the male rappers as well as against other female rappers. It really gave shape to her career. She was one of the kind of beneficiary of that program.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a force to be winning all those programs.
Yes.
Hey, gang, we got to talk about the fact that as hip-hop grows more popular, rapping becomes this really critical part of K-pop music. Sometimes we call that idol music. There's this ongoing tension between hip-hop artists and K-pop stars, but I think it's also led to some meaningful collaborations. Can you just talk a little bit about that tension and where that tension comes from, but also where the relationship is at right now between hip-hop artists and idols right now?
Tension always been there. But at the same time, they seem to have a symbiotic relationship by now. And the rap being one of the staples, I mean, the main staples of K-pop, and it's very important to have the rapper within the K-pop idol groups. And this is where the female rappers also find a place in the Korean music business. They are kind of recruited as a rapper, but hip-hop also become a very much part of the mainstream music industries. That they kind of collaborate with each other.
Right.
But at the same time, some rappers choose to be against K-pop as their way of staying true and authentic as a hip-hop artist. It's a kind of their choice. Some underground rappers, they choose to stay away from these music reality shows because they also would like to see not being involved in the mainstream media industry.
Well, that's a perfect transition to the last song that you picked, because the last song that you picked is Hawaji. That he one of those artists who's underground hip hop artists who's kind of avoided participating in the mainstream arena. Let's listen to his song "Got to Leave Soul."
Step 1 여권 지갑에 넣어놔니 뱅기표 돈 다발 가득 든 덤불 챙기고 우리 시스템엔 흔치 않은 케미컬 여긴 우리 너무 저지해 우리 서울을 가야 돼.
Hey Kyung, what is this song about?
It's quite difficult to pinpoint. It's a quite relaxed, a kind of a laid-back kind of a thing. It's a very philosophical and very poetic. And he simply said he wants to get out of here. He wants to leave the city and lead a life, really free life, and also free from capitalism, all this rush and sort of corruption and so on and so forth. He said, I want to pick up my passport and get out of here. So it's a quite really, really relaxed, but not really talking about giving any kind of particular kind of reference to any individual or a situation. So it's a quite abstract. It's very abstract. Yeah.
So as K-pop grows more dominant globally and it makes piles and piles of money, this conversation around cultural appropriation is getting louder. It's also getting more complicated. I would say particularly because K-pop idols have been criticized for appropriating Black American hip-hop aesthetics, styling their hair in twists or cornrows or wearing do-rags in the videos. Where are we now in this conversation around this idea that K-pop is appropriating something from hip-hop?
It's a really difficult question. And in the Korean music industry, race is one of the issues which they don't want to touch. Politics and the race are two things which the Korean music industry choose to not get involved too much. So that probably very much kind of reflects the way Korean art, many Korean artists seems to be, they can be political, but when it comes to race, they seem to be less informed, not very much conscious of the implication as much as they should have. Another thing is that they don't really separate in hip-hop culture what is aesthetics, the American or African American. So from their point of view, for many of them, it's American.
It's not a specifically African American thing.
This seems to be slightly kind of colorblind choice they seem to have.
Yeah.
And sometimes it backfires them quite often. But I think in a way, the hip-hop artist probably is even less sensitive. I shouldn't say this, but I think to some extent, the K-pop artists are far more sensitive toward this cultural appropriation. For example, BTS, when there was the Black Lives Matter, they made a huge donation. They spoke for these kind of issues and so on and so forth. So because they have the voice, everyone will hear. Whereas some K-pop artists or hip-hop artists, they probably don't think the racial issue in the popular music industry globally and locally is a very, very serious matter. I think there are a long way to go for everyone to realize how significant and important it is.
But I'd like that answer because, it suggests, like all things, that it's a little bit complicated, right? Like the idea that that hip-hop has been so incorporated into so much of K-pop during a moment where hip-hop itself has kind of become the dominant culture in pop music in North America anyway, right? And there's like a borrowing, but like, are we borrowing specifically from Black Americans, or are we borrowing from hip-hop being like this main dominant force in North America? And maybe there are still conversations to be had about where that borrowing really is coming from. Do you see anybody trying to like change or lead those conversations as they happen right now?
I'm not quite sure, but the thing is that borrowing in K-pop industry is that they borrow from just about everywhere and anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Plus, many of the producers and the composers are African American, the artists. So, this, you name it. Some of the many prominent the hip hop producers and the artists, they are very much involved in the production of K-pop, which is globally, internationally produced music, which has a K-pop label.
Yeah.
K-pop as a label. So in this case, how do you kind of, which part is a cultural appropriation, which is borrowing, or which is a kind of a collaboration?
Yeah. And,
So,
and I think
yeah.
what you're getting at is an even larger conversation within hip-hop as to whether hip-hop becoming a large pop music force dilutes what hip-hop is supposed to be about and who hip-hop is supposed to be for, because there are plenty of artists who will tell you we have long gone past the time when hip-hop is a specifically black music that's specifically made for black people. It's now kind of entered into a hyper-acceleration era that is almost similar to like what happened with jazz or what happened with blues. It sort of migrates beyond the specific confines of the people who made it, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, I think the recognizing and paying respect, attribute to its origin is really, really important. It's really, really, really important, because without it, we're not getting anywhere, and also we'll be stealing the kind of someone else's kind of a heritage.
Yeah. Well, Hey Kyung, you wanted to end this playlist with J-Hope, Becky G, Chicken Noodle Soup. Why Chicken Noodle Soup?
Oh, I first of all, I love this song. I think it's a wonderful. It's really, really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it probably shows what is really happening globally. Not just about the hip hop, but what is really happening in the global music industry. The non-English language popular music, like a K-pop and Latin pop and the reggaeton, are becoming increasingly prominent. Yeah. So they're no longer kind of marginal. Another thing is which I like about this song is because this song is a cover of a Chicken Noodle Soup by Afro-American artist Webster and Young B in 2006. What I like even more about this, a US-born Latin American pop star Becky G, and the rapper and the dancer J-Hope. So they're kind of doing together, and the K-pop and the Latin pop meeting together, and they're performing in Korean, English, and Spanish. I love it. I think this is how I think a wonderful music can meet together, and there was a really beautifully produced music video, and they're fantastic artists.
Chicken noodle soup, chicken noodle soup, chicken noodle soup with a soda on the side. Chicken noodle soup, chicken noodle soup, chicken noodle soup with a soda on the side.
From Gwangju 한 것이 이렇게 금납 충자 스트리트 여기 내 할렘 Neuron up down bounce in my team.
That is a bit of Chicken Noodle Soup, J-Hope, Becky G. Before that, you heard my conversation with Hey Kyung. She's a senior lecturer in music at the University of Liverpool. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Look, when you think of the Beatles, I imagine a few things come to mind, right? One of the greatest bands of all time, a band that shaped how we think about pop culture or pop music, how we think about fandom, how we think about what is even possible for an artist to achieve. What you probably don't hear that much about is the impact that the Beatles' style and fashion had on pop culture. Deirdre Kelly is a journalist and a longtime fan of the Beatles. I spoke with her earlier this year about her new book, Fashioning the Beatles, and I wanted to know what made the Fab Four style something that she wanted to write a book about.
Oh my gosh. Well, for me, it's so impactful when I look at them.
Yeah.
I have to say, I still get weak in the knees. I've been like that since I was very young.
Yeah.
I had my bedroom postered with Beatles images. I gazed at them. I tried to emulate certain aspects of their style. And just to your question, you know, what you said in the introduction, very few people pay attention to the importance of the look to the Beatles' success.
Right.
And so I saw a wide open territory, suddenly something that hadn't really been explored before. And there are reams and reams and reams of books and movies and documentaries done on the Beatles. And here was a fresh angle.
When I think about the Beatles, I guess like when I think about their fashion, maybe I think of the suits, you know, from the early sort of era. But can you just give us a sense of the external forces shaping their fashion sense back then? How did they come about this fashion sense?
That is an excellent question, and it's in a way the focus of the book. I take a deep dive, in fact, into each year of the decade, the 1960s, that the Beatles essentially dominated. Yeah. And I did that because the look is ever evolving. Often the Beatles are described as chameleons. They also are talked about by Mick Jagger as the four-headed monster, because within that evolutionary look of theirs is also a consistency where they cleaved together as a band to a unified look.
Right. Like there's something kind of still Beatles-esque about every sort of shift along the way.
Yeah, and that Beatles-esque element is a very interesting point. Yeah. And something that even I found fascinating as I was doing the research. And the research was painstaking, I must say, because as I mentioned earlier, this hasn't been a topic that many people have delved into. Right. But what you discover about the Beatles is just as with their music, they took influences and inspiration from a variety of sources. They were secure enough in their genius, in their own innate sense of greatness and talent, to be flexible, to allow themselves to change and go, hey, that's cool, let me try that on. Literally try that on. And sometimes their fashion choices were extremely eclectic and sometimes not even in fashion.
Is there one that stands out for you, like an example?
Oh, yeah. For instance, the corduroy. Yeah. The Beatles, in fact, won the, or were honored with the MBE from the then Queen Elizabeth, allegedly for boosting corduroy sales and rekindling British manufacturing. And corduroy is a fustian fabric that was delegated to the working classes, to the labor classes. It was not in fashion. This was something that you wore to work in the factories, in the fields. And the Beatles really dug this fabric because they were deeply anti-conformist, anti-establishment. Yeah. So that was also a deliberate choice on their part. And so then when they take a fabric that isn't popular and they make it popular, it becomes fashion. I'm sure some of us are wearing it today.
Right. I mean, listen, fall season is corduroy season for a lot of people. I guess, listen, last question, leave it here. If you had to, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, if you had to pick one Beatle who had the best sense of style, who would it be?
This is a difficult question. That's like asking me what's my favorite Beatles song. Can never say it. Yes. My book does start with George Harrison, Gorgeous George, as he was known in the day. But I have to say that it's Ringo Starr who wins the style sweepstakes. Ringo, hey, he took his name from his penchant for wearing a multiplicity of rings. Yeah. So right away, you know, this is a guy who's deeply interested in his look and his visual presentation. Yeah. And throughout his career with the Beatles, he not only, like the others, jived with the times and took trends and Beatleified them, but he always had a polished look, and he was very bold in his color sense. Yeah. Those of us who may have seen the Get Back movie might remember the lime green suit that he walks in, and then he also loved pattern. Yeah. And today, Ringo is still rocking hard at 83, and his style is impeccable.
Deirdre, it makes me happy to give Ringo his flowers any day of the week. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Deirdre Kelly is a journalist and the author of Fashioning the Beatles.
I know it's true. It's all because of you. And
That's Now and Then, also known as the last Beatles song. I don't know if you caught the story earlier this year, but thanks to the magic of AI, Paul and Ringo were able to transform an old John Lennon demo into a new Beatles song, and then they released it last month. That's it for the podcast today, but remember, you can listen to any episode of Commotion anytime you like, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on Instagram. We are available at Commotion CBC. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I'll see you tomorrow.